business tonight's over in Scrutiny Committee. Can I issue the traditional reminder to ensure all participants use their microphones, as I will demonstrate by getting to do so. And our first item of business is to appoint a vice chair. Are there any nominations?
Yes.
Councillor Swainson. Any other nominations?
Second first, please.
I'll take a seconder first. Thank you, Councillor Carter. Any other nominations for vice chair? In which case I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour?
Okay.
Any against? And any abstentions? Calvin, do you want to join me? Do you have any apologies for absence for tonight?
Yes, Chair, we have two from Councillor Simon Marlow and Councillor Eric Buckmaster. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, members, we have before the minutes from the previous meeting held on the 10th of March. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for me to sign these minutes as the true and accurate record? Councillor Nichols. Is it a contribution or a...
No, so I was going to propose. Oh, sorry, I was going to
Thank you.
propose them. So I jumped the gun there.
And a seconder, Councillor Swainson. All those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. One abstention. So that's carried. Chair's announcements is item 4. The only announcement I have is probably a slightly obvious one, and that is we've got a very busy agenda for tonight. And I would encourage members to be concise in their contributions. Someone's made the point already, perhaps you don't have to, but I'm not here to stifle debate, obviously. Declarations of interest. Do we have any? Thank you very much. That leads us nicely to our first substantive item, which is sewage discharge and its cumulative impacts on East Hertfordshire's rivers. I invite Councillor Vicky Glover-Ward to introduce her report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting this on behalf of both myself and Councillor Hopewell as it impacts on both of our portfolios. This report has been brought forward to support the committee's consideration of an issue that we know is of significant concern to our residents, the cumulative impact of sewage discharge on rivers across East Hertfordshire. Members will recall that in October 2025, this council agreed a motion recognising both our responsibility to protect our rivers and the growing evidence of declining water quality, driven in part by the frequency and scale of wastewater discharges. We are fortunate this evening to be joined by senior representatives from Thames Water and also the Environment Agency. Their attendance provides an important opportunity for members to better understand the scale of the issue, the data behind it, and the respective roles and responsibilities of those organisations in managing and regulating our water environment. This session is primarily about information gathering and constructive scrutiny. It is an opportunity to ask questions, test the evidence, and explore how the cumulative impacts of sewage discharge are being addressed, particularly given concerns that these events are no longer exceptional but increasingly frequent, as was mentioned in the motion. It is also worth being clear about the role of the planning system in this context. Where there is clear evidence that wastewater infrastructure is inadequate, this may be a material consideration in planning decisions, particularly where development would lead to unacceptable environmental impacts such as deterioration in water quality. However, members should be aware that the delivery of sewage infrastructure sits with the statutory undertaker, and national policy generally assumes that necessary upgrades will be provided. Our adopted district plan policies, particularly WAT 6, wastewater infrastructure, and DEL 1, infrastructure and service delivery, already provide a basis for managing this, requiring that adequate wastewater infrastructure is in place to support development and allowing proposals to be refused or phased where this cannot be demonstrated. Robust and up-to-date evidence remains critical to ensure these policies can be effectively applied. The insights gained today will therefore be important in informing our future work, including the new local plan. As part of that, we are currently commissioning a water cycle study to strengthen our evidence base and ensure we fully understand infrastructure capacity and impacts on river health, so that future growth is properly planned, aligned with that capacity, and environmentally sustainable. I would encourage members to use this session to engage openly and constructively with our invited guests. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, the way I've proposed to run this session is that take the presentations from Thames Water and the Environment Agency first, and then have a kind of omnibus debate rather than take each one in turn. Discussion, presentation. I'm happy with that. So in that case, I've asked the presenters to keep their presentation to up to 15 minutes. So hopefully we can achieve that. First presentation is from Thames Water, Jake Morley and David Harding.
No, thank you, Chair.
Gents, over to you.
For those who don't know me, my name is Jake Morley. I represent Thames Water from their local engagement team. I know some of you, and I don't know a lot of you, which is a fault from my part, because I look after the political relationships with Thames Water and local authorities. I'm also here to provide investment information, answer your questions as well as possible. And I think it's Councillor Ward summarised it really well in to say that there is a scale of a problem here. We as a company are not shying away from the fact there is a humongous amount of work to be done to improve on river health. We as a company take that incredibly seriously. And hopefully you'll see with some of the updates that we can provide you today, and also hopefully the debate that we can spark, respectfully of course, that you show that we can show that we are making progress on this, albeit I will caveat that right now, it's slow progress, and a lot of people would like to see things happen a lot quicker. It's been plain for everyone to see that Thames Water as a company needs a turnaround. We are in the middle of that turnaround, but there are some green shoots in terms of progress being made. But again, we'll widen that to the to the overall debate about why sewage discharges happen, because I think it's not as clear cut as some of the media and public life would like you to believe. And if you've researched the topic, then I appreciate that you might know a little bit more about it, but I'm trying to take it back to the very first steps for those who might not be so close to the issue. Like I say, I'll try and keep this under 15 minutes. So if we can go to, I'll just start off some general updates about the company, mainly informed from our half-year results. Then we'll talk about the river bodies and the sewage discharges. Moving on to investment, we'll touch on planning, and then hopefully if we can foster some partnership working with you as a local authority, we can go forward on that basis. Sorry, joined by my colleague David.
It's my name's David Harding. I'm the customer stakeholder manager for county.
So yes, so like I mentioned, there are some green shoots. The first half of this year has been shaped by good progress of our all around in our operational transformation. We saw a 20% drop in pollutions and leakage performance. We know the infrastructure requires a big investment, which is why you may have seen from our adverts, we've launched the biggest upgrade in 150 years, because in the first 6 months of this financial year, we have increased capital investment by 22% to 1.3 billion compared to the same period of last year, all while still trying to work out our recapitalisation plan and how we move forward as a company in terms of bringing that company debt down. So the investment has been funded by customer bills. I think a lot of people have been, perturbed by that, but the reason for it is that we need to gain that investment so that we can start improving the infrastructure that has been needing it for quite some time. Just to add on that, we have increased our social tariff program for those who need help. I think it's not an insignificant amount of almost 500,000, well, over 500,000 people on that social tariff scheme. So we're not leaving customers behind. We are absolutely keeping them at pace with us. And like I say, this will allow to drive that transformation in terms and hopefully be a company that we can show is really turning around. So obviously the main focus tonight is sewage discharge into rivers. As I mentioned, it's not as clear cut as possible. There are some root causes that basically start in the network underneath your feet every single day. As you can see, put on there is infiltration. This is when groundwater forces its way inside sewer pipes. That essentially eats up the capacity and flows down to the works. The works can't cope because it's at a certain threshold of literage per second. Also exacerbated by misconnections on new developments, which again we can touch on planning concerns, but again very disruptive, and it costs us a lot of time and money to go and find these misconnections, because essentially we're backtracking over years of work that we wouldn't have seen under the ground. Inundation, again, a huge amount of water can get into our sewers through inundation. Gaps in the manholes, you see those there and there. And just any physical damage that you can think of. So driving EV chargers is this specific example through our network, but also route ingress and things like that of some of our more rural catchments can open up our sewers. And I'll pass this on really quickly. Yeah, and say unauthorized connections as well. We'll also do this. So it's really important for us as a company to protect our sewers, but we can't do that alone. We do need help from local authorities, highways authorities, to manage that rainwater when it does hit the ground, especially in urban environments. Otherwise, it finds its way into our network, eats up that capacity, and ends up at the treatment works. And that's generally what you see that drives those storm responsive spills into the rivers. We'll come on to it later, but you can see that the weather can have a big deciding factor on what happens in our operations at treatment works. So we've just picked up the water bodies in East Herts because I believe the concern about the state of the river and the thing that drives poor status has come up. David, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, to try and give a sort of a snapshot, an overview of rivers within the council district. I went through the Environment Agency's Catchment Data Explorer, which is open source, and I picked out the water bodies sort of wholly within the council district that had a poor ecological status under the Water Framework Directive. And I won't read them all off there, but those are the ones I just wanted to sort of give an overview of the reasons for not achieving good ecological status, because it's quite a sort of a mixed bag. If you go to the next slide, please. I mean, that is the Thames River Basin overall. That's the whole of our region. You can see the breakdown of the causes for not achieving good status, with the water industry being up there as the largest, followed closely by agriculture. And really across the country is a very similar picture. It's in more rural catchments, obviously, it's more predominantly agriculture. In the more urban catchments, it's more predominantly the water industry. Next slide, please. And the relevance of this, so that those Water Framework Directive classifications, they identify reasons for not achieving good status, which feeds the Environment Agency's or river basin management planning, which prioritises improvements. That in turn feeds the, apologies for all the acronyms, but the WINEP, the Water Industry National Environment Programme, which sets objectives for us, so tighter discharge permits for sewage treatment works, other programmes reduce the number of storm discharges that have got to be achieved by a certain time, and that then feeds through into our strategic business plan, which is set every 5 years. So if you go to the next slide. So I'm not going to read through all of these, don't worry. I've just highlighted, just to give a flavour, in red, where the water industry is cited as a reason for not achieving good status. Wherever you see flow or groundwater abstraction, I have to point out, obviously, this is Affinity Water's supply area, so we can't really comment on those, but you can see lower down where it's water industry, point source, sewage discharge. So these are things like, where there's high ammonia, high phosphorus, low dissolved oxygen as a result of things like storm discharge or final effluent discharge. And wherever you see those, they will feed through into the Water Industry National Environment Programme. and there will be investment upgrades to meet those tighter permits. Just looking at Cotteridge, for example, because that was cited in the paper, and it's quite a good example because it shows the sort of the kind of some of the complexity that sits behind those figures. You see those alarming figures of thousands of hours of discharge. A first point is, of course, it is only the duration of the discharge. It's not an indication of the volume that's discharged or the water quality of it. More on that later. But just taking Cotteridge for the last sort of 4 years, because the point was made that, you know, between 2022 and 2023, the number of hours of discharge doubled. And just sort of going through and looking through into the rainfall figures, I just cited some of the meteorological data there that, you know, 2022 was the driest July in more than a century. And you can see the green line that, well, obviously we did have lower rainfall. And if you look at 23 and 24, where obviously there was in 24 significantly more hours of discharge, that was the wettest winter on record. And it is winter rainfall that seems to impact more in these catchments on storm discharge, because Jake alluded to, you know, groundwater infiltration into sewers, river inundation of sewers. If the rain falls in the winter, when the vegetation's dormant, you get much more groundwater recharge, you get much more ingress into the sewers, and you get much more storm discharge. Just on storm discharge, though, in high priority treatment works and areas where we're doing investigations, we are starting to install continuous quality monitors. So these are automatic water quality monitors, which will measure upstream and downstream of a discharge point. So rather than just reporting the number of hours that water left the site for, it actually measures what the impact is on water quality downstream. Yep, I'm just if you just scroll through, you see wherever it's red, it's water industry. But looking at some of the other reasons, you know, there are a whole plethora of reasons. There are a whole lot of pressures on rivers.
And so I guess that takes us naturally to what we're trying to do about it. And you'll notice a theme, and I'll try and skip through as much as possible. You can read this as in your leisure time. But ultimately, where we notice that there is an issue, especially around things like phosphorus in a river catchment, we generally have a plan to address it via the WINEP schemes. There is a caveat on some of these schemes in that if we don't have a date associated with it, that's because it's subject to recapitalisation and understanding where the investment will be post recapitalisation. But I can talk to you about what we've done so far. This just highlights the primary issues of some of our works. Again, I picked them out for ease. These come off of our storm overflow assessment plans. Again, as you'll see, very reactive to the environment which it's in, surface water, groundwater. Again, sometimes a combination of both two of them, which brings me to a significant scheme that we delivered at Buntingford for £17.4 million. That upsized the capacity by 20%, and the more that we can push through our works, the more that we can increase what comes into the works is treated and then put out the back end fully treated. That means that we will have less storming. And again, the issue is that the levels of flow that we do get through in those wet conditions mean that unfortunately it sits in our storm tanks, whiz over, and ends up becoming a discharge. Again, delivered in 2024. Barkway, which discharges the River Quin. We completed an upgrade there. This is more specifically around the phosphorus reduction schemes that we're required to do, again, to help the river recover, reduce the amount of phosphorus, which means that, you know, preventing the eutrophication process, you know, algal bloom, things like that. So this is more to do with quality of what we are putting back into the river. Chatmore End, there's a scheme that was delivered at a cost of £3 million. Again, it's to help with the overall volume of sewage going through that works. Modifications to the inlet screens, allowing more to essentially get through. There were some site modifications, again, realising that we could do things much more efficient. Again, a lot of these sites are confined to a specific footprint, and when you've had some years of underinvestment, ultimately we have to find new ways of treating that. And to do that, we have to work within the footprint that we've got. So sometimes it's a modification exercise more than just adding bits of kit or newer kit. Again, Fairfield, we hope to complete that scheme within 2027. Again, that's to do with capacity of storm tanks. So again, when we know there's a particularly rain responsive catchment, holding more in the storm tanks, making them bigger, allows us to essentially stop that discharge, that untreated discharge going into the river. It allows us to then get it back through the process, allow it to be treated correctly, and then return to the river as quality effluent. Again, a phosphorus scheme here, which again will add, I guess you could say, tertiary treatment, which goes back to the river with less phosphorus and nutrients going back into the river there. And there are some work pending. There's some works pending. Western, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's dependent on our recapitalisation programme. That's again a phosphorus scheme, again corresponding to the needs of the river, and Bishop Stortford as well, again corresponding to the needs of the river to reduce that phosphorus to 0.25 milligrams per litre. So at this point, I think we're running out of time, so I'll just whiz through this. Just as a pollution overview, it just gives you an idea about what pollutions can be imposed on Thames Water, depending on what's happened after any pollution, whether that be from a manhole, whether that be from our treatment works. But it's well enough to remember that the root cause of pollutions isn't actually hydraulic overload or structural issues. It actually comes from third parties or blockages. That's the majority of what we see on our network. And we are trying to help or work in partnership with local authorities to reduce those blockages. And we do that through customer education pieces. But if there's any partnership working to be done there to get the word out about blockages, then we're absolutely up for that. And again, this is a scheme that we have internally at Thames Water, Environmental Guardians. We have a lot of great people in the teams who are passionate about river health, who give up their spare time to go and look at outfalls, go and look at our sites to make sure that they're acting correctly. So that if for whatever reason, should a EDM monitor not register a discharge, things like that, we're making sure that we're on top of it. So again, this is a company that really does care about their role that they play for the environment. I skipped through these. I suppose it's come back to the planning process and partnership working, but we've just got some helpful information about misconnections and how much that can severely impact the network and how much that will push through to works. Happy to send this out to members just to read it. And I suppose touching on that point of planning, we do plan for development. It's a process in which we start with the local authority, the primary point, in the sense that we have to understand what's coming down the pipeline, and our modelers will look at current capacity concerns, and they will build out that model, build out what they believe is the correct model to cope with that. Those extra flows coming through. What I would say is that yes, we can advise any local authority when it comes to sites and catchments that we are getting to the point of capacity at, that we will need some time to invest in our infrastructure and agree a phasing plan in which certain sites come online and connect to the network and receive it at our treatment works. Again, happy to discuss that in detail in the Q&A session. And then, we move on to, as you mentioned, storm discharges. We encourage everyone to share this, members of the public, environmental groups. We're openly and transparent about the shortcomings that we've had, but we absolutely want the public and local authorities to be a part of the change as well. And this is the education piece that I spoke about, which is the Bin It, Don't Block It scheme. Again, pollution is driven by blockages, is the leading cause. We hope to help publish some education pieces. I've actually worked with Woking Borough Council and a few parish councils on education pieces So any local publications that we can supply information about where this particular area sits within the I suppose ranking table of blockages, it just helps create awareness whether the public are also doing their part as well to help the sewer network. Again, we encourage this as well, which is reporting a problem. Again, mostly for customers, but if for example you are seeing discharges at an outlet that that you can't get an answer from, say, a customer representative from, please do use that. It will be logged. It will make sure that we have to respond to that. And again, just saves time for customers and for members to report issues. So I suppose, yeah, that's the conclusion of the our part, I suppose. And yeah, happy to take questions at the end.
Nearly 20 minutes. Sorry. Yeah, I appreciate members will be chomping at the bit to ask questions, but I'm going to ask the Environment Agency to talk to us first, if that's right. Huge amount of information in those 40-odd slides. I presume we're going to copy those around to members. How are we going to publish them? Are we going to publish them? I'm into the public. I'd like to welcome Environment Agency representatives Chris Wilson, not the Chris Wilson, and Manfai Tang from the leadership team. Gents, over to you.
Yeah, just a quick introduction. I'm Chris Wilson. I'm Area Director for the Environment Agency for Hertfordshire and North London.
And my name's Manfai Tang. I'm the Area Environment Manager for the Environment Agency. So good evening. Thank you for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to present to you. So I'm here to talk about the Environment Agency's work, storm overflows, sewage discharges and river health, and then cover some of the activity we are doing specifically in East Hertfordshire. So briefly, I'll cover our regulatory role, our government plans on sewage discharges, monitoring data and trends, river health challenges, investment programs, and our local work across the catchment. So the Environment Agency here, the Environment Agency is here to protect and improve the environment. Our role is as regulators of the water industry. It's our job to enforce the rules. Our guidance is to tighten standards and to lower the number of spills. If a storm overflow occurs, then it must be investigated by us and by the water company. And to investigate, we mean to maintain and improve underperforming storm overflows as outlined in a government storm overflows discharge reduction plan. And we regulate this using 4 main mechanisms. Through permitting, we set the limits on discharges, monitoring, where the water companies self-monitor, but we also inspect and audit. And I'll come back and give more detail on this. We also assess their performance through the annual environmental performance assessment, and this is the star rating. And finally, action, where companies fail, hold them accountable through enforcement. Just like to go back to 2023, when the Environment Agency instigated the Water Industry Regulation Transformation Programme. And that was basically to give us more resources to deal with the non-compliance. Because to deal with this, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to enforcement, as our response has to be proportionate. And we do this through our enforcement and sanctions policy. And to give a couple of examples, using VMPs, or variable monetary penalties. And the purpose of that is that that's a process that goes through the Environment Agency. which is quicker than the courts, and also through enforcement undertakings, which are an alternative to prosecutions. But going into more detail about the water industry transformation regulation transformation program, that was set up so that we have more inspections. And what I mean, I'll go into more detail of that. Going back to 2023-24, we were only conducting 1,409 inspections that year. Moving on a year to 24-25, we were conducting over 4,500 inspections. And by 25-26, we had completed over 10,000 inspections of water company assets. And we did that through recruiting and training hundreds of new officers, basically to get more boots on the ground. And we've also have started to use more data effectively to focus on the more serious environmental offences using new digital tools to transform how we regulate the water industry. But just to cover some wider government plans, back in 2022, the government introduced the Storm Overflow Plan, and that was basically to set targets on the water industry for increased monitoring and also to set targets to reduce the use of overflows. Following that, last year in 2025, we also had the Special Measures Act. And this was to provide the Environment Agency with stronger enforcement powers. And I'd give two examples. One of them was lowering the standard of proof for us to take forward enforcement action. The other one was new statutory requirements on the water companies to publish their data. One of the examples is the Pollution Incident Reduction Plan. I'll come with other examples later on. And then you would have heard about the Cunliffe Review as well, the Independent Water Commission, which is coming up, and that still has to go through its transition period, but that will cover wider reform of the water regulation, giving more transparency, greater accountability, and stronger penalties. So how we're doing this? So you've already heard Thames Water talk about EDM, or Event Duration Monitors. This was something that the Environment Agency introduced back in 2016. And to give you some figures, again, back in 2016, we had less than 1,000 monitors. Now there are over 14,000. And hopefully, and by the end of 2023, over 100% of all storm overflows are monitored at 100% coverage now. And the purpose of that is so that we can monitor information, so that the water companies have to provide that to you publicly, and they have to share that, and then we can use that afterwards to then take action where needed. So that data is published publicly. It gives both transparency and accountability. And our latest figures from 2025 shows that nationally, reductions in spills is improving significantly. Well, as a caveat, I have to point out, and I'm sure that Thames Water will say as well, that these storms overflows, some of them are necessary for their site operations as well. I'll cite two examples that you drew up, and I'll skip over this because Thames Water has already covered this as well. But the purpose of providing this data is the collection, so that Thames Water can take action, the publication, so that you, the public, and the council can hold them to account, and for us as the Environment Agency can take action by reviewing the data afterwards. But from this, we've only have been able to get this after the rollout of these monitors, and we only had a full year of full inspections, as I said, increased inspections over the past year. As another example, this is the River Lee catchment, again showing the overall reductions. But then, again, this is following a year of inspections and increased monitoring. But overall, it's showing improvement either through investment or through asset upgrades or through intervention. But more will follow with these later on. What are the drivers for this? Basically, it is to focus on river health. And we do this through the Water Framework Directive, which assesses river health. You've heard Thames Water talk about good ecological and chemical status. Our target is to achieve good status. Currently, the national position on this is only 16% nationally achieve good status. And this is due to multiple environmental indicators. So it's not just one indicator, so it's a combination of those, but through the Water Framework Directive, it only needs to fail on one indicator, then the whole river fails. So I'd like to emphasize that the weakest element is what determines the status, and I think Thames Water already highlighted that. Just an example, this is listing some of those indicators. So for example, it could be nitrogen fertilizer applications. It could be like some physical modification, plant species, blockages to river that prevent fish passage, as well as sewage discharges. But a key message is that no single cause leads to this. So there's no single, let me rephrase that, sorry. It's a cumulative effect of all of those, and that we need to address all these factors to achieve good status. And just as an to refer to East Herts itself, within East Hertfordshire, no river currently meets good status. But we have a number of tools to address this. And I mentioned the WINEP. So this is the Water Industry National Environment Programme. This is where the water companies carry out more than 20,000 inspections between now and 2030, investing £22.1 billion, which not only improves the environment, but is also to help stimulate development and support the government's objective of boosting economic growth. Focusing specifically on WINEPs on this programme for East Hertfordshire, and this is what the water company, Thames Water, should be focusing on. So looking at storm overflows, phosphorus reduction schemes, and monitoring upgrades. I won't go into detail about that because you just had Thames Water go through that. But there is their link in this slide, which shows you all the WINEP programs that are occurring within East Hertfordshire, if you would like to look at this afterwards. But we, as the Environment Agency, are also supporting integrated improvements as well. We're moving towards moving beyond just single site solutions to more catchment focused whole catchment systems, combining both engineering, nature-based solutions, and partnerships. So this just shows that we are working in partnerships in contributing to improving river health, working with farmers to reduce pollution, removing small weirs, controlling invasive species, providing advice on chalk rivers, and doing practical interventions with ponds and tree work. So this image shows a number of projects that's happening within East Hertfordshire. I'm just going to quickly go through 4 projects before ending. So very quickly, the River Rib. So there's this project is looking at re-meandering. So this is making straight rivers more curvy again, so that it's more natural and creating more habitats, improving connectivity, water quality, and ecology. Another one on the River Bean. This is a flagship project that we are doing with Infinity Water and other organisations such as Hertfordshire Middlesex Wildlife Trust, the River Bean Restoration Association. And this work is looking at removing weirs, bypassing them so that's more fish movement, and also farm-based improvements. up in the corner at Grange Paddocks on the River Stort. It's a major restoration scheme to reconnect 10 kilometres of river where sections of river have been disconnected, so that improves river passage. Lots of weir removals and more habitat improvements. But all these projects just highlight the number of partnership working that we need to do within our catchments. And here's an example of the Upper Lee Catchment Partnerships, which covers quite a large region of habitat improvements, more weir modifications, and lots of farmer engagement. But a key message for this is that collaboration is essential, as no single organisation can solve this alone. So in summary, just like to finish off, what we have are new and also will be getting new, stronger regulation and enforcement. And that's for us as the Environment Agency. We're improving the monitoring and data transparency. So that's with increased inspections, provision of EDM data, which you have access to. Significant investment is underway and extensive local partnership working to improve river health. Progress has been made, but challenges remain complex and long-term. And I end there and welcome questions. Thank you.
Thank you for those presentations. A lot to take in, members. I'm going to invite questions and discussions now. I think what I'd like to do is collect the questions up and group them so we can get through as many as possible, maybe 3 or 4 questions at a go. Is that all right? Yeah, nobody's disagreeing with me. So who's going to kick us off? Shockingly, it'll be Councillor Cox.
Thanks, David, and thank you for everybody for coming. It really is appreciated. If you saw my email inbox, it's almost like we live in a different universe. If I could kick off with a question to Thames Water, do you accept that your current level of sewage discharge indicate that the overflows have become an operational feature of your network rather than genuinely exceptional emergency events? And if so, why should our residents not describe your conduct as ecocide?
No, I don't recognise that position. I think
the plan is I'm going to try and gather a number of questions because otherwise we will be here all night. I promise you. Councillor Deffley.
Yeah, thanks very much. And just reiterate that. Thanks everyone for coming along tonight, talking about this important subject. Another one for Thames Water. Eye-catching 1.3 billion raised in capital, which is impressive. But how much of that is going to be spent on preventing sewage discharge?
Councillor Carter.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. It's very interesting. One term I didn't hear, I mean, from Thames Water, this is really for Thames Water, but I guess it's also for the Environment Agency. So talking about the effect of sort of extreme weather on the network and how that leads to more sewage outflows. So we are in a climate emergency, and extreme weather events are going to increase. There's no question about that. How can we be confident that you are addressing those challenges which are coming down the line much faster than we would like? Because we can certainly expect, much far more droughts and far more sort of thunderstorms and so on. So what are you, it's not clear that the network can cope as it is, and it's improving slowly. The long-term planning hasn't been there in the past. How can we be sure that the long-term planning is going to be there going forward?
I think I might pass those questions on now. Can I just double check from body language? It looked like all of them were directed towards Thames Water rather than the Environment Agency. Sorry?
I think mine was both,
Okay.
but particularly Thames
Okay, well,
Water.
let's pause. Let's ask Thames Water to come back first and then Environment Agency if they have anything to add.
Thank you, Chair. Just to address Councillor Cox's question, no, I don't recognise that position. We do take our role within the treatment process and essentially as guardians of the environment incredibly seriously. As you will see, just as a snapshot, again, I accept it's just a snapshot, but we can provide further data in terms of how we see the rainfall and our storm responsive networks discharging. It's a steady rate in which you can see a pattern emerging. I think it does go to the other councillor's question about future asset standards, 100%. But your sewage network and the treatment works operate 24/7, and they're not always discharging. You will see on the EDM map when they are discharging, and the likelihood is essentially in those rainfall situations. Again, not discounting the fact that also some of our catchments are storm responsive and also in winter months sit in groundwater, which will constantly contribute to the problem. So it's not so much about the assets not having capacity, it's our network in distress, which pushes the problem onto our treatment works. By no means upgrading the treatment works is a silver bullet because it isn't. But we have to work in tandem. And I think as well, absolutely, we have to manage surface water a lot better than we have been. And I think what's become entirely clear, hopefully, is that it's a shared problem. You can't have flooding and you can't see the issue of sewage discharges and flooding separate. They are very much intertwined. Yeah.
I think just it's worth, as I say, explaining a bit about storm discharges, because certainly, I mean, the interest, the public interest and concern in river health is very encouraging. But I think the way that the narrative has played out in the media is that storm discharges are the cause, and they're a sign of a failing system. Storm discharges are an essential part of any sewer network and sewage treatment works. They've always been there. We haven't always monitored them, but they've always been there. If you were to design a brand new sewage treatment works, a state-of-the-art treatment works now, it would have the facility to discharge storm sewage into the environment. The thing to bear in mind, it's often referred to as raw sewage, when in fact, if the system is working properly, it's not. The systems are designed such that a sewage treatment works will have to treat in excess of 3 times its dry weather flow before it can start to use its storm tanks. So that's a tripling of the flow with rainwater. So it's already very dilute. It will then have to have a certain number of hours of storage in those tanks so that there's an opportunity for it to settle, but also that it captures what's called the first flush, which is the highly polluting material that first comes through the sewerage system with the onset of rainfall. So by the time there is a discharge to the environment, it will be 3 times the dry weather flow will be fully treated within the works. There'll be several hours of storage within the storm tanks. So what would actually discharge to the river would not be raw sewage. It would be highly dilute sewage or rainwater with small amounts of sewage in it. It is an essential part of the design of sewage treatment systems all around the world. I think, obviously we've started we have to monitor them now, and sometimes the number of hours that are reported can look alarming, particularly in very wet winters where some sites, due to groundwater infiltration, can be discharging continuously for weeks. But I made the point earlier about that is just the duration, the time lapse between the start and the stop of the discharge. It doesn't say how much is discharging. It could be a torrent or a trickle. And it could be crystal clear spring water going over the weir into the river. So that's where I think it's really important that when they start to come online, these continuous water quality monitors, which are required to be installed, they're being rolled out this AMP and onwards, where they will take continuous 15-minute data of various quality parameters upstream and downstream of discharge. So you'll be able to see the baseline quality in the river, and you'll be able to see the impact of the storm discharge and the foreign effluent discharge. So that will start to give a much more meaningful picture of the impact that they're having. Another point, though, about that Jake touched on about really it is about surface water management. It's not about sewage capacity, it's about surface water management. In the Thames region, for historical reasons, because most urban development in our region took place in the 20th century, most of our region has separate sewerage systems, one set of pipes for wastewater, and either another set for surface water, or it discharges to groundwater through soakaways. So we do not actually discharge as much or as often as other regions that have older, more combined sewerage systems. But what we do have, as Jake mentioned, is lots of misconnections, where you have separate systems. People connect their rainwater to the foul when they're carrying out home improvements and extensions in areas perfectly legally where they were never designed to have separate systems, that they were designed to have the rainwater going to soakaways, and they only had pipes designed for wastewater. People can still legally connect their surface water to the wastewater system that was never designed to take it. There is a piece of legislation, Floods and Water Management Act 2010, which had a Schedule 3 in it, which has never been enacted, which would remove that right to connect surface water to public sewers. Well, that would apply to homeowners, that would apply to developers, but it's still yet to be enacted. And I think that would be a bit of a game changer.
Sorry, Dave, that was covered in your slide. So if you could
Yeah. So I was going to say, we have seen great progress, though, on new development with planning authorities requiring developers to use what we call sustainable urban drainage systems, where the water and surface water is managed through vegetated systems, ponds, soakaways, etc., rather than connection to the sewer. But there's plenty more to go to, particularly with climate change and more extreme weather. We need, as a nation, to manage surface water better.
It's going to come to the point about total investment. As you see on the slides, every site that has a capital project that we can share with councillors will attach a value to it once that work has been spec'd up, essentially. Unfortunately, some of the other work, because it's dependent on recapitalisation, we can't tell you a huge amount at the minute. But some of our projects that I hadn't touched on in the highlighted sites, we do have some smaller sites that again have some investment going into it. So I'll happily provide an exhaustive list to the committee.
The question was whether the 1.3 million you're raising is going to all go on in infrastructure work. It kind of a yes or no question, isn't it?
As in, is 1.3 billion being spent in East Hertfordshire? No. We will have to prioritise sites. We will absolutely have to prioritise sites, and that's across the Thames region.
But where we have a performance commitment from Ofwat via the Environment Agency, we face financial penalties if we don't comply with those performance commitments. So it's not in our interest to not achieve those commitments. So we have to make the investment.
And Councillor Carter's question, third question.
Sorry, Chair, could you just remind me of the question?
I didn't make very detailed notes, Councillor Carter.
Well, in summary, what are you doing to prepare for the extreme weather that's coming down the? It's about the climate emergency, and you haven't shown ability to plan ahead to date to cope for the present situation. So how can we be confident? What are you doing to make sure that we address all of that much more extreme weather which is coming down the line fairly quickly?
Well, we still aren't a statutory consultee in planning. We have to be consulted on local plans, but not on individual planning applications. A great many planning authorities do consult with us, and developers do engage with us early. But we can recommend, we can advise, but we're not being a statutory consultee. We can't impose conditions ourselves. As I mentioned just now, we have seen great strides made on major development where the surface water is the issue. Each person contributes sort of roughly 150 litres per second per day of wastewater. That's not the issue. It is the surface water when we get roofs, patios, roads connected into the system. That's when we start to see storm discharges, flooding. And yeah, without the sort of, still with people having the legal right to connect surface water to public sewers, regardless of capacity, that is always still going to be a challenge in planning. But that really, I think that is the single one thing we can do to become more climate resilient, is to manage surface water outside of the sewerage system.
Anything to add from the Environment Agency?
Thank you, Chair. So to answer Councillor Nick Cox, so the question about operational features, this is something that the Environment Agency is tightening down on. So for example, with more boots on the ground, we're able to check that when the water companies use storm tanks, they are only used during storm events. Also that with more people on the ground, we've also undertaken, for example, as an example, a dry spill campaign. So during dry weather, there should not be any spills. So that's something that the Environment Agency has done. For Councillor Rachel Carter, in regards to extreme weather, that's something particularly of concern for the Environment Agency, and that's what we particularly focus on to ensure that's enough water resources, water availability for both during dry weather and also understanding how the impacts of extreme weather, so like intense short-term bursts, which lead to surface water impacts. We have to manage that. There is a requirement for us to take that in our decision making and making sure that there's sufficient water for all users. So it's not just for drinking water, boat users, but also for the environment. So we have to take all that into consideration in our decision making and making sure that those that we work with take that, have that understanding as well.
Thank you. Lots of hands during the early discussion, which I haven't made note of. So let's reset. Who wants to go next? George.
I've got thank you for the explanation earlier about, because that was on my mind. So I wrote it down because it's long. But specifically, earlier on we said that much of pollution is caused by blockages, and from what I can gather, that doesn't work for the kind of the combined sewage outflow kind of response, because that's driven largely by the surface water coming in, like you say, diluting the sewage, then putting it up and pressurizing it through other positions. If it was just blockages and things like that, and we've seen a decline as the maintenance has increased, the investment in infrastructure has gone down, surely that means that the problem was the lack of infrastructure to begin with, or the lack of the strength of the infrastructure. I'm not saying that's bad, because clearly it's going in the right direction, which is good. But that's only one element which is in your control. And if the whole thing is driven by, from what I can see, the kind of surface water, the impact people having more driveways, the developments, the heavy rains in big goes, because you don't control everything around that, do you? So what?
No.
Yeah, and see, part one of the problem is the maintenance. The infrastructure. Fine, you can fix that, but if the environment around it keeps changing and increasing the demand level you have, so I guess my question is, what with money you have, can you do to try and help offset that? And because you're a big organisation, what can you do to lobby for changes in the rules to enable us to maybe?
Well, just to
Sorry,
touch on,
again, I'm going to collect the questions and then ask you to reply, because we just won't make any progress otherwise. So I've got Councillor Swainston and Councillor Andrews. Yeah.
Thank you, and once again, thank you for engaging with us. However, I have to say, and again, this is mostly Thames Water, I am a bit concerned that it seems to be that a lot of what you're saying is passing the buck. It's not our fault, it's them. It's not our fault, it's them. And that does worry me. One specific question, infiltration, is that not down to degraded pipes owned by you? You seem to be implying that it's not your fault that you're getting the water going into your system. So I think we're connecting still, aren't we? Another point you made, which I think our residents would want me to challenge, you said that you seem to think it was obvious that all these costs have to be passed on to the customers. Most people, it's not a national company. You know, you have shareholders and things. In most companies, the shareholders are the people that bear the risks. Is the need for recapitalisation not due to the fact that too much has been taken out? Finally, you said you'd done some work on your reporting system. I've not used it recently, so I had a quick look and I was able to find a report that I knew something had been reported near my home. I can see it's been reported, but I can see nothing about what you've done about. So maybe that still needs a bit more work, that system. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope you're making lots of notes on that. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got two points of interest. One is around the value of the Lee Valley to us all. We all know it and love it. The tributaries we all know and love. We're all concerned about our chalk streams. And there comes a point in the Lee where it gets to Rye Meads. And there's a lot of concern amongst residents, the length of the Lee, as to the capacity or otherwise, the ability to expand or otherwise of Rye Meads, which seems to take the brunt of everything that ultimately goes into a pipe. It comes out of Rye Meads, or so we are led to believe. And it would be catastrophic if we had an event which led to a major problem with Rye Meads. So I'm very keen to know, and my residents are very keen to know, what capacity issues, if any, there are, and what steps are being taken, given that housing development is only going one way. And every house now equals 2 toilets, a washing machine, a dishwasher, et al., all presenting their individual and unique problems. The other concern I've got is, and I'm not sure where it emanated from, it might be the Environment Agency. Enforcement must be proportionate. From my point of view, purely personally, I get the impression, but I've been but I've been aware of this for 30 or 40 years, that when it comes to enforcement, it's usually too little, or appears to be too little, way, way too late. 5, 10 years down track. We've all forgotten. We don't know what it was that it pertains to. It doesn't seem to be, in the great scheme of things, a lot of money, because it is almost invariably money. I'm not aware of any individuals or any corporations being held responsible and people going to jail. Because some of the stuff that we've seen, and I had one in my ward, which, you know, unfortunately, the Environment Agency had to deal with, and they dealt with it very, very, very quickly when they did. But nobody was ever taken to task over it. So it's a question of enforcement. My residents want to see enforcement. They want to see fly tips. They want to see this. They want to see that. But certainly, when it comes to pollution, which we read a lot about, they want to see enforcement, and timely enforcement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I'm going to put those for answer now. I think just to mix things up, I'll ask the Environment Agency to answer first, and then.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you, Councillor David Andrews. Just to answer that question about enforcement, yes, we recognise that enforcement does take time, but then we have taken steps to remedy that. So yes, we are tied to the enforcement process. We have to follow due diligence. But as I said in the presentation, we've had a couple of things that have come in over the past few years. So we've introduced new powers that we can use. So I mentioned about the variable monetary penalty. So that doesn't have to go through the courts. So we can take that through by ourselves and result in swifter action. There's the other thing of saying lowering the bar of a standard of proof, so that we don't have to gather, as you know, before, maybe as 100% evidence. You know, it's a balance of probability. So it's a change in that. And then the accountability of of seeing people take, serving punishment. Again, the Special Measures Act that was being brought in, the CEOs of water companies are actually accountable for and will be held, liable for the actions of the water company. So that is coming in as well. So things are changing. So, but we'll agree with you that it hasn't been a case in the past, but we are changing the way we act so that we respond quicker, faster, and be a bit more timely. But the other thing as well is communicating that as well. That's something we need to do more of, so you see where we are doing and the outcome of our enforcement action. Thank you.
So I think, just responding to the point of enforcement, I don't think it's our place to comment on what enforcement powers should and shouldn't be. We are as transparent as we can be with our data. Any person, customer, concerned resident that you have can access environmental data through our EIR request system. All it takes is an email, and there is a 21-day return period to ask the questions that you'd like to know about environmental data that we have. We will hand that over to you. On the point about Rymeads, I'm not aware of any growth schemes that are planned at Rymeads, nor any phosphorus schemes, but I'll confirm that to the committee in due course. Yes, please go for it.
So taking Councillor Williams first, just to clear up about the blockages and the pollution. So what Jake was talking about there was actual reported pollutions where there was environmental detriment. So if we were talking about a storm discharge, say from a CSO or a sewage treatment works, that complied with the conditions of the storm permit, that's not a pollution. So, but if you could imagine, if, as I said earlier, if a discharge takes place, say, from a sewage treatment works that's treating 3 times its dry weather flow, and there's been settlement in the storm tanks, and it's discharging to a river that's got high flow in it because it's raining a lot, the chances of, I'm not saying it would never cause detriment, but that the chances of it causing detriment are small. But if you compare that, say, to the middle of a dry spell when the river level is low, and there's no dilution in the sewer, and the sewer becomes blocked, and it the sewage escapes through a manhole or an overflow pipe and gets into the river, then that's far more likely to cause detriment. So that's what we mean when we say more pollutions happen due to blockages, because they happen in times of low flow, and not as part of an approved designed system of overflows. But yes, to your point about managing the flows that go into the system, to specifically surface water, yes, we are not very much in control of that, and like any form of pollution or flood water management, managing it as close as possible to source is the best solution. So if you can intercept the surface water when it lands on the ground or when it lands on the roof, and manage it, store it, reuse it, infiltrate it, but do anything but connect it into the sewer, then that is by far the better solution, environmentally as well as from the point of view of economics. And I think that's where we all need to work in partnership, and I do think it's where the planning system needs to become more robust, to make sure that is a requirement of new development, and that so there's great public awareness around things like permitted development, that people don't just connect to the nearest pipe or take the cheapest option. Does that answer your question?
Mostly. I think that's the point. I guess the other question, and I don't think it was a part of my question, so it's a bit cheeky, but it was that David lets me. It was kind of the amount as well, because I did notice in your graphs earlier, water is a third of the total outflow, regardless of the level of dilution, which is one thing. So whatever you do to get that down is good, and having the infrastructure investments that seem to over time be. I guess the question is, at what level, like how much investment, if there is a calculation, is needed in those places to make sure that those outflows, even the ones that aren't technically pollution but contain low levels of pollution into fast flowing, if I'm not mumbling too much, how much money is that going to cost? And then on top of that? How much is the actual maintenance of the network afterwards? And then, I don't know, this is really bad, but it's how much you actually get in income to pay for that.
Yeah, I suppose that comes back to the sort of process that we described at the beginning, with Water Framework Directive that classifies the water bodies and their environment, their ecological status, and prioritises improvements, which feeds through into that WINEP programme, which in turn feeds into our investment programme. It's a continuous, 5-yearly cycle that's been going on now, and will continue. It's an ongoing investment process. So yeah, to say it will cost. I mean, I know when there was talk about ending storm discharges, I think the figure of 100 billion or something was bandied about, but I think it was very much a sort of a back of a fag packet. It's when you start to try to go away from capturing everything in pipes and treating it all to try to manage it at source, given how many connections there are at the property level, everything starts to be quite daunting. You can't do it overnight. It's going to be a sort of a long-term process.
Thank you. Got some more questions. Sue, Naeem, and then Vicky. So, Sue.
Thank you. Sorry, mine haven't been answered at all.
I beg your pardon, Miriam. Sorry. Remind us.
So it's one about infiltration and why isn't that Thames Water's fault? And the other one was, why are the customers liable, not shareholders?
So the infiltration one very much is our issue. If it's on our network, if it's on the public sewers, then yes, we have to manage that infiltration. It's a thing that's been there forever. It's not a sudden deterioration in the fabric of the pipes. There's always been infiltration. It's just, I think we've had a succession now of very wet winters where we've had prolonged high ground level, and it's led to prolonged storm sewage discharges and flooding. We are just investing millions in relining pipes, sealing manholes, fitting sealed covers. It's just a mammoth task. It is, the Thames, the Thames Valley, a lot of the geology is chalk, which is normally very free draining, hence an awful lot of areas are drained to soak away. But when you get these prolonged wet autumn, winter, spring periods, and the groundwater can rise by tens of meters, then we are seeing that as a problem, causing infiltration more and more. The only solution is to line pipes, seal manholes, and fit covers. It's very expensive, it's very disruptive, but we are doing it. It has to be prioritized. On the question of funding, yes, I mean, the model for most businesses is that investors will put up the capital and then the customers pay for the cost of the borrowing over time from revenue. That's the way every business works that I've ever worked in. Yes, in the past, a past owner of ours, Macquarie, who sold us in 2017, they were an investment bank. They did extract a lot of money from Thames Water and left us with a mountain of debt, which is about £18 billion. All I can say is, that was not a decision taken by the staff of Thames Water. That was taken by the owners. It was taken in the public eye. It was in front of the economic regulator. Now, I'm not trying to pass the buck here. I'm just explaining the facts. There's nothing that Jake or I could do about it. And it happened. The money was taken. But our current owners, who've owned us since 2017, have never taken an external dividend. So yeah, they have only put their money into the business. They haven't taken any out.
Just to add to that as well, through the extra obligations and regulations put onto us through the WINEP scheme, there is a shortfall, or was a shortfall, and we've had to defer our settlement with Ofwat, and we've kept that open to go to the CMA, say that we've got a shortfall here in the funding. with all the obligations that you're asking us that we should rightly do to invest on our assets, we need to come to some form of solution. And to bridge that gap, there was a need to increase customer bills just so that we can keep up with that level of investment, which will explain why we raise bills to customers.
It's also worth pointing out that I think the 10 years prior to that, the bills did come down in relation to inflation. So we had sort of effective, real price decreases for 10 years, at least 10 years. So there is an element of, if you average it out over sort of 15 years, it's not such a dramatic increase. But it was a fact that Ofwat prioritised, affordability for at least 10 years, if not longer. And it did impact on investment. But so now we've had a sort of a steep increase to play catch up effectively. And it's across the whole industry. I think all of the companies have had significant increases in this time.
Thank you for your honesty. I think it's important that people none of us hold the staff as such.
No, I wasn't. Yeah.
But I think we do need that transparency for the public. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you. First, I've got two questions, one to Thames Water and one to Environment Agency. My first is to Thames regarding planning applications. There are big concerns around the role of water companies and their involvement in the planning process, particularly the fact they're not statutory consultees and how as stakeholders they respond to planning applications in general. There's often very minimal response even to applications for really large proposed housing developments, and few details given on existing capacity of local sewage treatment works, their ability to meet the extra demands that would be imposed on existing infrastructure, and the extensive upgrade requirements that would be needed to meet the extra demand, time it would take to implement requirements, and the costs involved. This type of response is of particular concern when the application is for a large-scale unplanned development, something that is a major concern in my Buntingford ward. I wonder how satisfied you are with the current arrangement by which water companies are involved as non-statutory stakeholders in the planning process, and can you see a future way, in a more meaningful way, that water companies can contribute to the process? And then to Environment Agency. Some local councils have started to implement rights of the river policies, such as Lewis Council has to protect the River Ouse. Could the development of a national rights of the river policy be a way of offering additional environmental protections to rivers that could better define what good river health is in law, enable prosecution and add extra ways to help guard against contamination and damage caused by illegal sewage discharge, over extraction and contamination? Thank you.
No.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, I'll add my thanks to coming along, but also to what Councillor Swainson was saying about how it's been put on to customers to pay for a lot of zoning. You were careful to say it was no external dividends had been paid. Obviously, internal dividends are a slightly different story there. But my question really is, sorry for Thames Water, but really building on what Councillor Andrews was talking about earlier with Rymead. I think I'm right in saying that you've given assurances to this council that there's going to be capacity there up till 2036. And also that you aren't putting there's no investment going into that. Fine, but there is also a huge amount of, well, there are existing discharges already, and we have development, principally Gilston is what I'm thinking about here, which is going to massively increase the number of houses. So two-part question: what guarantees can you give that the development isn't going to make the existing discharges worse, given that you're not investing? And you have spoken a little bit about the impact that surface water runoff has in causing flooding. So what engagement have you had with the developers at Gilston? Obviously they're going to be building these houses, they're going to be connecting them all up. Have you engaged with them already to minimise the impact there, to work kind of constructively with them, or is that?
Vicky.
It was two matters of clarification, actually. The first one's about the cross connections. You keep saying it's planning, it's actually building control. Because it's a sign off of what's been installed, not what the designs are to be installed, if that makes sense. And that goes for both major new works and also refurbishment or changes to existing households. There is something on the historic side of that, because I would imagine that most of the problems are coming from historic cross connections rather than from new builds having a lot of Friday afternoon plumbers that manage to connect up the wrong pipe to the wrong pipe. The other one is that East Herts does, as a matter of course, for any of our majors or decent sized miners, we do consult with Thames Water, even though you're not statutory consultees.
Thank you. Go for it.
Well, my original question was about the investment that the planning, the forward. It wasn't about kind of district planning or development plans. It was about what are your strategic plans for investment to deal with the climate emergency?
I think we had provided an answer, hadn't we? I think.
So on the point of Rymeads, I can't say at the minute. I don't have the calculations in front of me. What I can do is I can speak to our developer services team and feedback to the committee about what conversations we've had with the developers. Essentially, how they've worked it out, because I do think it's important that if there are areas of planning that we have said there is no detriment to our network or either our treatment works, that we show you. I would say that the reason possibly, and it might go back to, sorry, I've forgotten the councillor's name, the Councillor Nichols' question about what are we satisfied with the arrangement? I think our planning response team would always welcome, new recruitment to deal with the amount of planning applications that they get from across the Thames Water region. They are a very small team, and this is not to say woe is Thames, but there's a shortage of people to respond to those planning applications. But I do make the commitment to all of the local authorities that I work with, is that if there are any planning applications that you do require extra information about, how we've come to the conclusion that we have done, we're happy to share that with you. And again, it applies to Rymeads and the development that you mentioned. It's also worth noting that any planning application under 10 units, we tend not to respond to. Again, that's a resourcing issue more than most things. Again, if we go to our developer services team who have understood the amount of units that are coming online to a system, and they realise that there will be like I said, a detriment to the system or to the treatment works, we will recommend grounding conditions or a phasing plan. The issue is that, again, like with most of the things that we mentioned tonight, some of those are out of our control. We can't enforce a grampian condition. We can only recommend that a grampian condition be instructed to be put on that planning application. Whether then that is then followed up after an appeal, again, as we all know, that can slip through the cracks. But again, we at Thames Water are happy to be transparent with the way that we've worked things out. And again, going back to the original point about enforcement and Environment Agency dry weather flow, dry spills, it's not within Thames' interest to not upgrade with growth within a catchment, because it does lead to dry weather spills, again, leading to more fines, and therefore we're in this cycle of non-investment.
Thank you. Environment Agency, did you have anything to add on those 2 points?
Yes, just to respond to Councillor Sue Nichols on your question about the rights of a river policy. So thank you for highlighting that. That's not something we in our local team are familiar with, but that's something that we can take away to find out more about, especially as you highlighted. It's in regards to the council in Lewis down in Sussex, so we find out more about that. But we do work in partnership, as I highlighted in our presentation. For example, mention about the river being Restoration Association, the Upper Lee Catchment Partnership as well. So if at, whatever the course of action, we could explore with them, but we need to probably take that away regarding the rights of the river.
You might like to listen to a debate in Parliament that took place in March this year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're coming up to 8:30, so we've been going an hour and a half on this, or predominantly on this. What's the feeling of the meeting? Are there more questions, or shall we move along? Nick? How many? Okay. How many parts does each question have?
Well, one each. So just to pick up on Rye Meads and the dry dumping, I mean, it sounds like a technical term, but one of the first visits I made when I became a councillor was the farm that backs onto the Rye Meads sewage works. And the first thing you notice when you get there is the smell. And then you tiptoe through the turds through the field. There's toilet paper everywhere, sanitary products. And eventually you get to where your discharge is. And in terms of investment, someone had built a weir out of sandbags to try and divert the sewage into the River Stort instead of onto the farmland. And there's been no upgrade since. That hasn't changed. Just to pick up on the second point, you mentioned no external dividends. I typed it into AI very quickly, and I haven't had a chance to check it, and I hate quoting AI till I've checked it. But it claims that you've paid out 300 million in the last 5 years to parent company holding companies, and that the Ofwat criticised you and penalised you for those dividends. So it's not quite as robust as it should be.
I'll take that one first. Macquarie, they set up an extremely complex corporate structure when they owned us, with holding companies and intercompany loans, which I don't profess to understand all of them. But yes, we do still make payments to the holding company. They left us with debt, and we still owe them debt as well. So yeah, but they had offshore holding companies, very tax efficient. So yes, there are payments that are made, but in terms of the current, the Canadian Universities Pension Fund, I think is our main shareholder, they have not taken an external dividend. They've only put their money in, haven't taken out. But yes, I mean, I think if you go onto Ofwat's website, they quote a figure for what the total water industry dividend has been since privatisation. But there is I think it's the University of Sheffield, or it might be London School of Economics, that quotes another figure which is about 20 billion higher. So, and I think the difference falls down to the interpretation between intercompany loans and dividends to shareholders, which, as I say, I'm not a finance expert, so I don't profess to entirely understand. But yeah, you will find controversy around it, around that whole episode. So yeah, I have to say that that's not to sweep that under the carpet, but it is in the past, and it's not happening now. And well, no, the payments, the legacy payments to Macquarie are, yes, but yeah, not to our current owners. The question about Rye Meads, yes, I've discussed this with the site manager on many occasions. That there is a plan to address the issue. Basically, where the outfall is, the river has been changed. The course of the river has been changed at some point in the past, and it now drowns the outfall when it's in high flow, so it can't physically discharge because it's drowned basically. So it backs up and floods the farmer's field. You've rightly seen temporary sandbag walls to try and sort of divert it back towards the river, but there is a project to reconstruct the outfall so that it can discharge in high flow. I mean, one option might be to sort of dredge the channel, but that carries with it, other environmental impacts and other implications for flood risk downstream. So, but it is being looked at, and it will be addressed. But I'm afraid you'll have to be patient.
Sorry, I just clarify that you just said there is a plan. So there's a plan, but there's no money because
it's not currently funded. No.
Okay.
That's not a plan. than ambition. Any more for any more? Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I don't think you need to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're obviously welcome to. Yeah.
Can I just add something, Chair? Obviously, for any questions, whether that be customer issues, investment, anything like that, if the Chair could share my details with all of you, I'm more than happy to receive any emails that you want to know information around Thames Water. Like I say, we want to work in partnership, so very much would appreciate if you reached out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
potentially receiving it. If you come back to the report, the report, just the report, Sarah and Vicky disappeared. Need to get a vote on that report. She disappeared.
Vicky. It might not seem like it. So if you do need to chat, could you take it outside, please? Just to formally close that item, we do need to vote on accepting the recommendations, which is set on page 18 of the agenda pack. The recommendations are that we A, welcome the attendance of the representatives from Thames Water and the Environment Agency, and B, note the presentation delivered, acknowledging the information and evidence presented and the responses provided to members' questions. Appreciate that's just a formality, but we do need to do it. So can I have someone to propose that, please? Seconder? All those in favour? Any against? No abstentions. Thank you. Be right to push on, or do they need a break? Onward, indeed. Correct. So the next item on page 27, item 7, is the emerging proposals to establish an arts-focused charity. I'd like to introduce Councillor Alex Darr to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. As you all know, this is just a quick overview of this paper. So firstly, our purpose here tonight is to get your ideas at an early stage in the development of this piece of work. Secondly, I want to ensure you that whatever model we end up with, our priority is to be legally compliant and transparent in the setting up and operation of this new CIO. The paper describes the processes we are considering to set up this new charity, but I think it would be helpful if I just quickly revisit the purposes behind it. As you will know from a previous visit to this committee, this council have run a successful Arts in East Herts event for 2 years now. This enabled residents in what is a very rural district to access arts in their local area. We all know how good arts are for mental health and well-being, not to mention benefiting local economies in terms of increased footfall and spend. The festival, which ran for 2 years over September and October, was highly accessible. We focused on being liberal in our boundaries of what was art. So, for example, it included creative writing, music and dance, as well as the visual arts. As you will see from the figures, it gave large numbers of residents a chance to try something new at a low cost or no cost, and helped encourage the local creative community and volunteers. The aim is that this new CIO will continue this legacy of finding grants and enabling the East Herts creative community to engage residents with activities that are beneficial to their health and well-being where they live. Beam was conceived with the key aim of providing an arts offer across the district and specifically through outreach work. Currently, Beam is not able to get gift aid on donations because this element sits under the council. By finding a way to channel the donations into the charity in a transparent and legal way, we will be able to enhance the element of Beam's outreach work across the district, focusing on bringing creative opportunities closer to residents. Discussions are in progress with legal advisors to set up a CIO. We already know that in order to be legally compliant with the Charities Commission, we need to be specific in our aims, objectives, and business plan. And just final point is we will be holding an Arts in East Herts event this year in September and October. We will be using some seed funding from the Community Grants Programme, specifically from the East Herts Lottery. This is while the process of setting up a CIO continues and legal advice is clarified. We intend to set up a reference group to advise on this year's event and as a shadow to setting up the CIO. Interested members, as well as interested external arts community activists, may become part of the reference group. I look forward to hearing from the committee on this proposal. Thank you.
So,
as a local artist, a practicing artist, I took part in both of the previous Arts in East Herts events, and I really welcome this proposal to extend the practice in a different, perhaps a different form. Just need to emphasise there is a really big need for more support for artists and creatives in East Herts district. And I think any future organisation would benefit from not being wholly council run. It needs dedicated trustees and organisations to focus on delivery and what is required by artists and from artists and creatives and the local community, and a diversity of experience is vital for that, I think. Hope that's not too critical. And it's really important, I think, that whatever entity is set up, that organisation and trustees are representative of those different stakeholders. And it's particularly important to have trustees that are from the creative community, perhaps education, consumers, venues, arts advisors and funders, to have a broad and successful model going forward. I think the charitable model is a good one. As I said in the report, you can apply for different funding and from Arts Council, National Lottery, and that's something that you as a council can't do and have limited funding. Look at the CIO model looks preferential, or a CLG, and I think looking at like between 5 and 9 trustees, I think would be a good option to represent the breadth of knowledge and diversity required to run a successful organisation. That's what I've got to say.
Thank you. That's really helpful coming from yourself as you're embedded in that community. And it sounds like if it, because legally and compliance is it's got to be the top priority, but you sounds like you would favour a greater involvement of trustees from the arts community compared to the council. And I thank you for your support and totally agree that, that's where we're heading. We should be able to access external funding by going to this independent model. So thank you.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I would agree that the CIO is probably a good way to move forward. I think arts are extremely important. I do have some concerns when it comes to page 33 as to how the potential trust or trustees may be appointed. I never like councils appointing trustees. I think it does become political with a capital P and a small p. So the one I would suggest that if you were going to go is to go forward with the nomination only with no appointment. That way it cannot be said that it's political. And if the council wants any control over any financial input, we could have a very strict service level agreement on the charity. But I certainly don't like councils appointing any trustees, full stop.
Okay.
Thank you. I think I find myself in pretty much in agreement with what John has just said, and also Sue. I think arts is very important. I think it's very important that we have a vehicle that we can take this forward. What I would say is that we need to be quite clear, and I think we'll need to be quite clear with the Charities Commission that there isn't another body already that can do that. And I'm assuming that you've already looked at that, and that is the case. From my experience, a CIO is the way to go, I think. Having been involved with a number of charitable organisations in the past, if you are employing people in particular, you need to have a corporate body that has the powers to do that, and a CIO is set up to do that. So I would favour that. I think I would also agree with John about making it as arm's length from the council as possible. I'm also aware, of course, that this council may be, if LGR goes through, may well be being wound up in a couple of years' time. So setting up something that is robust and is arm's length, I think, is the way to go. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. Yeah, well, very little comment to say, that I agree totally with what's been said, and I think it's absolutely the right time to do it. The sooner the better. Let's get this happening before there's too much change. And I like it. I like it that at 3.6, you know, the report actually acknowledges that we need to look at how we set things up for the new LGR, whatever that manifests itself as. And I find it refreshing that we have there, you know, while enabling some flexibility within the new unitary geography. So well done for picking that up. Absolutely. Let's get it done now. Let's get it up and running before LGR comes over the horizon.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you. Yes. I suppose my question, I think it's a great idea to have that you know, different body providing this, you know, collecting the money and providing these services. But there has to be good communication. If the money is, I'm just thinking about Beam, which is an East Herts owned asset, and if this charity is providing some services to Beam, then it does make sense that, you know, you have the creative director of Beam on the board. I can see it's not a political appointee that you would want, but you do need to have really good communication. Otherwise, you could have two, or you know, Beam wanting one thing and the trustees wanting another. So that would be my point about that, and how you get that in. And the other thing I'm not 100% clear about is whether this charity is just, and you have to be clear on the objects of the charity, but whether it's just there to support, to do the kind of things that the council has done up to now, or is it, will it have a wider remit than that? Will it also have links with other arts organisations? So I think it would be kind of good to think more clearly about what it's, you know, how it's going to work in that way, because there are many arts organisations across the district.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, broadly agree with what everyone said, particularly what Councillor White was saying about trustees. Apologies that I'm not going to have much details here. My only comment was I've had people feedback to me in the past that the current kind of ownership model at Beam means that they are not kind of, they can't apply for, they're not kind of, don't qualify for various kind of grants and various services that they would like to, but you know, they're not able to. Sorry, I don't have the details. I think if we are thinking about single charity, it would be good to at least understand what it is that Beam is trying to do at the moment, that, you know, they can't kind of qualify for those money for, and maybe this is something that we can you know, structure in such a way that, you know, whatever it is that they're trying to do then can't, you know, this may be good. You might have done that already.
I think part of the problem is because it's run by a council at the moment, that you just cuts you off from being eligible for lots of grants. That's the problem. That's why we're looking at this. Thank you.
Councillor Swainson and Councillor Williams.
Thank you. My main concerns have been covered by Councillor Wiley and Councillor Horner, because I think it is important that we have that distance with the risk of LTR. The other point, I wondered if anyone other than Brown Jacobson were consulted, because if I remember correctly, they were the ones who kept saying that Beam was going to be profitable.
I don't remember them being involved. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chair, could I just on that point?
Yeah.
Just
Just on to that point.
just on that point, just to be clear, because I think it is of value to members about the legal basis of that. We went out and sought, we procured legal advice. And Brown Jacobson have got a track record specifically with regard to charities. They are simply, if you like, advising us on the legalities of how to meet the requirements of the Charity Commission, how to set yourself up, the different models for trustees and such like and such like. We're not involving them in any, excuse me, anything about business plans and financials of it. It is that legal advice.
Thank you.
Thanks.
George, do you want?
I guess if I can expose my ignorance a bit. This the order. One, I guess is are we saying that Beam is owned in this situation, becomes owned by East Herts, but is managed by a charity that then can then apply for grants to do other things across the district? Is that?
I think I can answer that, and you, Jonathan, can step in, Hilary, if I get it slightly wrong. But we're only talking about the donations that go to Beam, and we can't claim gift aid on at the moment. So we've got to find a legal, transparent way to be able to donate them into this charity, so that then gift aid can be claimed. But with the rest of Beam, it wouldn't involve the rest of Beam, the programming or anything else. It's specifically about the donations.
George, you're looking very puzzled. Was that?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's just the nature of it, isn't it?
It took me a while to get my head around it.
So Beam is council owned, council run, but it collects donations for another charity.
No, like now you can go and donate to them like.
But it would in future be donating to this specific charity.
Yeah.
And then that charity can use those funds and whatever funds the council can scrape up and donate to it and apply for grants to then do.
Yeah, so you get a whole pool of money, and you can. So at the moment, perhaps it helps. I mean, I think it's in the paper, but the donations that have been collected so far, but Beam are sitting there, and they're not easy to use. They're not part of the revenue stream for Beam at the moment, so they're sitting there unused.
Yeah, I was trying to work it out. I couldn't quite.
I think that was useful clarification. And sorry, so I'll bring you in a minute. But you would need to find a way, if anyone giving a donation to the charity, to make sure that donation is ring fenced for Beam, if that was the intention of the donor. But presumably that's possible. Seeing some nods. So.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of emphasis on Beam, and this, my understanding is this is to improve the art office offer across the whole district, not necessarily in the main towns, but in more rural communities, and that's why I think this is really important. And that was demonstrated through the participation in Arts in East Herts, and that has uncovered a need for more coordinated programming across the district.
And that's why I drew out in my introduction, Beam, one of the aims of Beam, it is a regional offer, and originally it wasn't that everything was going to take place at Beam. It was about its outreach into the community, and this will help us to make use of that money, those donations that are sitting there to do that outreach work, but via the charity, with that more money added in. And I mean, it's sort of starting around a festival once a year, because that's the starting point. But what's to say that I mean, Councillor Carter I think part of what you were saying, Councillor Carter, is having an aspiration that's bigger than perhaps where you start from. And then we could have 4 festivals a year. Or I mean, that's just an example of what we could do. But you know, we can, with more money involved in this charity, do more.
Yeah, I think particularly there's a real deficit in available venues for artists for exhibition space and performance, particularly smaller venues. So if something could go towards that, that would be amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a really strong proposal. I really like it. And bearing in mind what other councillors have said other members, sorry, have said in terms of LGR, really need to get a wriggle on and get this over the line. So is there a timeline for this to be up and running?
As I said, the Arts Festival will go ahead this year, and we hope that the charity will be able to be set up by January 27.
Just quick observation from me that this paper is quite light on the finance implications of this proposal. So no indication how much it's going to cost. You've said no decision will be yet made regarding seed funding, but before it goes to exec, then the exec will need to be in a position to make those decisions, I'm sure. Any other contributions on this paper before we move
Do you want
on?
me to, sorry, just to clarify that point, this paper is about the establishment of the CIO,
yeah.
the funding. I mean, in a way, the funding will come through being set up and then applying for grants, and that plus what might be able to be brought in from Beam in form of the donations. So that's the starting point for the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Understood.
Thank you.
Just jumping in, one thought I had here. I think that the planners were setting up like an entirely new trust. Obviously, there's plenty of kind of existing arts organisations around. Was there any consideration about using some kind of like partnership with the existing organisations? Is there something existing that we could have sort of slotted into, rather than like where's the need for a new trust coming from?
There were some discussions with Hearts Visual Arts, and officers may have had others, but this is broad. Hearts Visual Arts is quite specific to art, and the festival that's been going for 2 years was a broad, like I said, a broad. We had dance, we had music, so the work that's been, the exploration so far is that there isn't anything like this at the moment.
Thank you. I'm going to put this recommendation to the vote. So the recommendation is that we review and provide feedback to the executive member communities on the emerging proposals to establish an arts-focused charity to enable arts and cultural endeavours primarily within the boundary of the current district of East Hertfordshire. Can I have a proposal and a second for that? So, and John, thank you very much. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have 2 papers on housing now. First one, agenda item 8, housing strategy action plan update. Marnie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. It gives me pleasure to present the Housing Strategy Action Plan update for 2025-26. I'd like to begin by thanking all the officers for their hard work on this matter. The update is shown in Appendix A of the report, and as you will see, it is quite long and detailed. There are 4 strategic priorities. 1, to deliver more affordable housing. 2, to enable a wider range of accommodation. 3, to provide support for the most vulnerable residents. And 4, to provide high quality housing options for older people which are better suited to their needs, and also to improve the sustainability and quality of homes. I am pleased with the progress which has been made on all 4 of these priorities, and especially pleased about the new homes which we have provided at truly social rent. The committee is asked now to examine the report and the progress of actions and to make comments thereon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion? Councillor Carter.
Thank you. It was just a clarification. Thank you very much for this. On page 47, it was just something I didn't understand. It says under 1.3, S106 payments in lieu are being used for rent reduction from affordable rent to social rent. So, but I was a bit unclear of how that worked. Does it mean that that money is being used for a particular period of time, or what's kind of meant by that? Because normally S106 is used for an investment in something rather than a rent reduction. So that's what I just didn't understand.
Yes, thank you. The Section 106 monies are monies which have been contributed by developers if they have had a development site and they're required to provide affordable housing and then not able to provide the housing on that site. They are then allowed to provide some money in lieu of the houses, and then that money has to be spent on housing. So then if an opportunity arises on a new site, then the council can use that money and some of its own money, and also it can leverage in money from the government, from Homes England, and then that enables it to purchase these houses at a lower price, lower cost, and then that enables the registered provider, the housing association, to charge lower rents.
Okay, so so it's not about reducing the rent as such. It's about changing the funding particular properties.
Well, yes, but the outcome is that the registered provider is able to charge a social rent, a lower rent. I don't know if maybe the officers would like to enlarge on that, but that's basically how it works.
Would it be helpful, Chair? Could be
if you can
really brief.
Add value to that, yeah.
Just Councillor Goldsmith's got that absolutely right. There's two really quickly. There's 2 distinct uses of the commuted sums as described. One is where we made a capital grant with regard to Limekiln to Hightown Housing Association, and that enabled them to provide an increased number of affordable units at that scheme, and they were all, and the level of grant that was given from us made them social rent as opposed to affordable rent. Another scheme with Paradigm Housing Association, whereby on a new build we were able to put in some grant, and that lowered the rent, 4-bed properties from a 4-bed rent to a 3-bed rent. And so there were 2 slightly different ways of doing it, both ending up as being truly affordable.
Sorry.
Thank you. I just thought it's worth pointing out to start with that this is a really important priority to update the housing strategy. What constitutes affordability in developers' terms is very different from the actual requirements of households looking for affordable properties to rent or buy. And it's too often the case that the level of affordable housing on offer is tried to be negotiated down to a minimum by developers in order to maximise profits. And this just doesn't meet the needs of local communities, and the houses that are available are often unaffordable to local people, particularly those wanting to leave home and young families looking to stay in the local area. In priority 4.5 mentions looking at empty properties and looking to disincentives to keep properties empty. as there is a need to increase the amount of properties available for temporary accommodation for homeless people and affordable rental accommodation, I just wondered what the current level of empty properties might be in East Herts, and if it's possible, in fact, to see them as a potential source of temporary and rentable accommodation by coaxing property owners and landlords into the rental market to meet the demand for social housing. I wonder if that's a possibility. And also, I had a concern about the strategic priority on 1.5 about increasing affordable rent properties in rural areas to address the needs there for low-income families. I have a concern that this often requires families to be car dependent due to a lack of public transportation. And so public transport provision and affordability of car ownership for those low-income families, particularly in rural areas, is a bit of a concern. And I wonder what we can, anything we can to address that, to negotiate with county council on improved services. I know that's a big ask, but it's just a concern I had. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that comment. Yes, I'm not sure, but we could certainly look at approaching the county council. Thank you.
Perhaps just to add to that, I don't have, Catherine and I don't have to hand the number of empty properties at this exact moment. We can get that. Those statistics are collated through our council tax colleagues, given that they administer various the council tax that relates to it. But we can get those, and indeed it's absolutely a good thing to try and use empty properties in that way. And we've, for example, leased 5 flats above shops in the centre of Hertford that are used as temporary accommodation, high quality temporary accommodation, as an alternative to bed and breakfast. So that's a small number, but an example on that. With regard to developments and public transport and such like, I guess the planning process largely is the vehicle, as it were, for bringing forward public transport enhancements. And I know our planning colleagues use that. One of the key things, I guess, is the way that we use choice-based lettings, whereby people do have choice as to where they're bidding for properties, so they can kind of weigh up, in a sense. That might be an imperfect answer. People in distinct housing need maybe feel they have fewer choices and whatever, but that does feed in a little bit into that equation, I feel.
Thank you. Kelvin?
Yes, thank you, David. I think actually Sue's covered the or touched on the points that I wanted to make. One of them was about affordability. I think it's very important that we do increase the amount of affordable housing, and I'm really pleased to see the use of the Section 106 to bring rents down to a truly affordable level. I guess my question around that was exactly how many units there were that where that had happened to date, and I note that there are some in the future. It was difficult to tot that up because it was mentioned in a number of different places, and I'm sure any figure that I get to is probably double counting. But I don't know whether you can give me that figure today, or perhaps give it to the committee later. The other issue was around empty properties, and I noticed that you'd done some work with council tax to evaluate the impact of council tax rates, I think, on the number of empty properties. Obviously, the ideal is to reduce the number of empty properties so that the shortage of housing in the district is tackled. Is there anything more in the pipeline that is going to be looked at in future on that? And then the other thing is that this strategy finishes in 27. Again, we've already referred to LGR. What happens 27 to 28 and beyond? Because we need to be keeping on with these priorities and ensuring that all of our priorities are up to date.
With regard to the number of the social rent homes provided, there were, to start with, 4 by Paradigm in Bishop Stortford, and then there have been the one Limekiln Road, that was another 25. And then there were some which were at Stevenage on our border, yes. And I think they changed the tenure there. I think there was 30 there, but I think Stevenage residents will benefit from those more than Bishop Stortford people, because they really are in Stevenage. So we've made a small start in East Herts and for Bishop Stortford, and those are the numbers. And, going forward with LGR, I'm not sure, but I suppose we will try to hand over all our good policies to whichever authority replaces us. But how that will work, I don't know. Maybe the officers know.
Sorry, I'll just interrupt a little bit. So we have had sort of initial conversations with Broxbourne particularly, because we know in the LGR world we will be with Broxbourne, about our housing strategy, also about our homelessness and rough sleeping strategy as well, which is next on the agenda, just to make sure that they align, because actually I think we are pretty much aligned. We have sort of similar ambitions in terms of affordability and the importance of increasing genuinely affordable homes in both the areas. So I don't think there are going to be challenges. I think once we know what the formation of the new authority will look like, we can then start planning in a bit more detail for 2027 onwards.
Thank you. Got all hands. Nick and then Miriam.
Just to say that Brigand's House Hotel has been empty for decades now. It's walking distance from Roydon Station. It's absolute scandal. It's a beautiful building. Could we put some pressure on the owner and threaten to compulsory purchase it?
I think that's a takeaway one, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry, John, I missed you out. I broke your name down there.
Thank you. Keep missing me out, Chairman, but I won't take it personally. On page 47, so actually referring to what Rachel said earlier, is it possible to have the section 106 payment in lieu of being used for rent reduction maybe rephrased, because it does look as if the money is directly going into paying people's rent, which is not what you actually said. So could we have it rephrased so as that people could actually understand it better?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Councillor Wiley. Yes, I'll look at that. Thank you.
Miriam.
Thank you. I just actually want to thank Councillor Goldspink and the officers for all the work on this, because I'm delighted that we actually do have some affordable homes now. And personally, I walk past Limekiln Lane most days, and it's great to see that it's being used by local families rather than just sitting empty, because it has been sat empty for years. So well done for all that work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's put these recommendations to the vote then. So the recommendations are that we undertake a review into the progress of actions, which we have done, and make any recommendations regarding performance against these actions to the executive member. Have a proposal, please. And John did put his hand up as well, so we'll record that. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Finally, back to you for homelessness and rough sleeping strategy 26 to 31.
Thank you, Chair. As with the previous item, I begin by thanking the housing officers very much for all their hard work on this. Under the Homelessness Act of 2002, all local authorities are required to carry out a homelessness review and to publish a strategy every 5 years. This new strategy will be the 5th one for East Herts. Many things have changed since the last review and strategy, most noticeably the Renters' Rights Act in 2025, and then a national plan to end homelessness in December 2025. The draft strategy, which you see this evening, has 5 priorities. One, to continue to prevent and relieve homelessness at the earliest opportunity. That's prevention rather than cure. Two, to increase temporary accommodation options to improve sustainability and suitability, thus reducing the use of bed and breakfast accommodation. Three, to continue to improve the pathways in and out of supported housing and the support available to vulnerable single people. Four, to maximise the availability of affordable housing. Five, continue to provide support to reduce rough sleeping, and where this does occur, to ensure it is brief and not reoccurring. Thank you for looking at this draft strategy this evening, and I will welcome your comments. Thank you.
Members, any comments on the strategy? Start with Councillor Carter.
Thank you. Just a quick one. Thanks very much for this report. I was just wondering, and perhaps this is in the report and I've missed it. It talks about reducing the reliance on bed and breakfast accommodation, and obviously that's something we want to do. But I wonder if there are any numbers there about how much we're using it and how much it's reduced by.
Thank you. I don't know the numbers myself. I'll refer to the officers on this.
So in terms of households in bed and breakfast as we speak, we have 25 households in bed and breakfast. The majority of those are single people. So that's really the gap we're looking at. We're not talking about hundreds of households. We're talking about 25 households, which is what we're looking to fill through other options.
Thank you. And do we know how much it was before?
So if you look at our numbers, our numbers in B&B currently are lower than they have been throughout most of last year. So they were hovering around about the 30, 31. They're currently 25. If you go back to sort of pre-COVID times, we were talking about those numbers being in the sort of tens rather than, so they have crept up over the past 4 to 5 years as our numbers in approaches have increased. So we get more homeless households approaching us for assistance, and we need the capacity to offer accommodation options for those households. We have done a lot in terms of extending our temporary accommodation options, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. So Marketplace is a good example of that. The units in the centre of Hertford. We have the Rectory and Hillside, but we need to look at further options to make sure that our stock meets the demands of the numbers of households we're seeing coming through the door.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that that economic conditions as they are do increase the numbers of people wanting that kind of accommodation. Thank you.
Councillor Clements.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and yes, thank you, and thanks to the officers for their work. I guess I'm kind of looking for you to comment on. I think there's tension between priority 4, maximising the availability of affordable housing. That's great, but we are already on tilted balance. We're not meeting housing targets. I'm wondering, like, how you're kind of seeing, which of those are going to win out there, because it's great that we're saying, we want 40% of homes being affordable. If there aren't enough homes coming through the pipelines, that's it's a policy on paper essentially. So I wonder if you can kind of comment on what you see the tension is there and kind of plans to resolve it. And I guess for the rest of us, it's a good reminder that when we are making sort of choices that are difficult to stomach on planning applications, this is part of the reason why those developments done in the right way is so important. But, yeah.
Well, I think we have to be constantly vigilant and on the lookout for any opportunities, and when they arise, we need to seize them. But there's no guarantee that we will be able to achieve a great deal more. or many more houses?
So,
Thank you for this report. It's very detailed. I do know that there was a concern that there would be an increase in no-fault evictions in the weeks leading up to the new legislation coming into effect. But generally, will the changes brought in by the government as part of the Renters' Rights Bill, particularly outlawing no-fault evictions and then to fixed-term rent agreements, see a reduction in overall homeless levels in the district? And also, the report identifies contributory factors in homelessness amongst vulnerable single people as being mental and physical health issues. I see that the council already works with health hubs to try and prevent this homelessness. Does this identify, I assume this identifies problems before they escalate? Are there more early interventions in mental and physical health care and other social support that can be put in place or is already put in place to avoid these vulnerable people being put at greater risk of homelessness? And I wondered, beyond health hubs, whether there's work with other partners such as NHS and social services to work in this way, and are these people as a group particularly difficult to reach and put interventions in place?
So in terms of renters' rights, I think we saw an increase. So no fault evictions, people being evicted from the private rented sector was our single biggest reason for homelessness and has been for probably about 2 to 3 years. And we saw huge increases, not just running up to renters' rights, but for the year and a half preceding that. No fault evictions, so Section 21 notices could be served up to the 1st of May. They're still valid up to the 1st of May. Landlords need to initiate court proceedings before the 31st of July, but the reality is that those evictions will go through a court system over a period of the next year to 18 months. So we're not going to see the end of no fault evictions anytime particularly soon, but we are, there is already a change. So we are seeing more properties come into the rental market. We're starting to see some green shoots of actually costs in some rental prices falling slightly as well, which are or should have some positive impacts in terms of homelessness. But it is really early days. We're in June. It was 1st of May. In terms of mental health and ill health, the work in the Healthy Hubs is one part of it. I think we were involved in the work with communications, and CAB were part of that. And I think all of that joint work, so CAB, health partners, social prescribers, Healthy Hubs, will all have an impact and be important in terms of prevention. I think at the moment we do joint work a little bit too late, and I think that's part of the strategy going forward, is actually how do we strengthen those partnerships, how do we get involved before that 56-day prevention duty, how do we make sure that we're supporting people earlier to not get into difficulty paying their rent or complying with their terms and conditions of their tenancy. There's definitely more to be done.
Yes, I'm now looking very seriously at better working with the CAB. They have experience of working with housing associations, and they have lots of insights to offer. So I'm hoping to set up some partnership working with the CAB very soon.
That's great, and that came out from our task and finish group. There was some outcomes there which were really important, I think. So that's really good going forward.
thank you. Anyone else like to discuss this? No, Catherine, sorry.
Yes, very, very briefly. Thank you very much for the report. It is very comprehensive, as Councillor Nichols said. One thing is it doesn't have a section 6. So when you're redrafting it, make sure that you take that out and move them all up one. The other point that I wanted to, I think single people are a priority, and that comes out here. One of the things that I've noticed in another dealing with people in another district is that they've used the choices based applications, the way that they've prioritised, so that anybody who is in single persons accommodation, now they are a stock holding authority, so they have a little bit more scope, but they've actually used it so that anybody who is looking to perhaps move from single persons accommodation into elderly persons accommodation actually goes to the top of the list, is in band A, and that's just something that I've noticed in that particular district. Maybe that is one of the levers we might want to look at in future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. In which case, I'm going to move to the vote. Recommendations for ONS are that we consider the contents of the strategy, which we've done, and we raise any further points for consideration by inclusion. Oh, sorry, before we do that, this is up for consultation at the moment, isn't it? When does that close?
Oh, yeah, I think Councillor Gosling's right. It's about the 15th of June.
Right, so relatively soon. Okay. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for that recommendation, please? Councillor Andrews, Councillor Waller. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Item 10, pages 99 to 114, annual report. My notes say that the leader will introduce this, but I'm not sure that's right, is it? Who's going to be taking this? Okay, Ben, over to you.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks to officers for preparing the report. So this is the corporate plan. So I'll be brief. We obviously took it through full council first in February 2024. We brought it here to you all in June last year for an opportunity to review the performance and to comment on the plan. This is a follow-up. So we've obviously got the corporate plan and the performance for the year 25-26. I'd welcome any comments and questions. Last year we brought the plan updated for next year, for the following year. We haven't updated it here. So if there are suggestions, comments and thoughts on what you feel should be in it, we're very welcome to hear his suggestions. Over to you.
Thank you. Any comments on the update? I'll start us off. Just congratulations on whoever developed the app. I think it's really good. It kind of takes all the angst out of remembering what day it is, bin day. You just get a buzz in your pocket. So well done on that. We've got 12,300 downloads. We could probably double that, I would have thought. So yeah, our councillors can just maybe fly the flag for that a bit. Any other comments on the update? Kelvin?
I will also add my congratulations on the app. I think it's brilliant. I've used it not just for the waste, but I have also used it for reporting as well. And it has got a whole range of different functions on there, not just telling you which bin to put out. I think the other things I was very pleased to see in here around the waste was the increase in recycling, the reduction in the residual waste, and also one thing that I wanted to flag up, I think, was air quality. There's a lot more needs to be done on that, and I suppose my question would be, going forward, is how we get the resources in to tackle that, because I think that's something that definitely needs to be tackled, not just in our three AQMAs. Obviously, I've got a personal interest in that because it's within my ward, but across the whole district. So I note that that we've done some things there, but there's a lot more to go on that.
Yes. Sorry, shall I come in
Yes,
now?
please.
I can respond. Yeah, thank you. You're right. The app's been brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to the day when we can do everything on it. Well, not everything, but we can do a lot more. As far as the Equality Action Plan is concerned, you're absolutely right. It's really frustrating that we've had this award-winning the management plan, and we haven't really been able to do a lot of work with it, just because we've just been tied down by lack of resource. We're hoping that we can use some funding that we've now got, some funds that we've now got, to start to plan to do something finite, much more finite than we have in the past. How we do that and what we do, I don't know yet, but I think it makes sense that those zones, those areas with high pollutants are a target. Whether we do one or more, I don't know, but yeah, hopefully we'll have something soon, at least, that will start to address that challenge.
Yeah, I'll add my praise for the app, but also for everything else that went on. And there's I was reading through this, and there's so much stuff that we do all the time that I see a lot of it, but certainly not all of it. So yeah, I was impressed. And the chatbot getting like 88% successful responses, that seems to be far better than any chatbot I've ever used. So yeah, I'm impressed by that. The only thing that I was sort of going to question and that kind of highlighted in here, it's probably not a question for you here, but I noticed that the number of affordable homes that delivered was kind of lower than it has been for a few years, and I wasn't sure if that's just kind of natural pacing of which developments have come forward and stuff, or if there's something kind of longer there. I appreciate that might not be a question for now, but I don't know if you can comment on that, Ben.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Affordable homes, I think that reflects the nature of the sites that have come forward. I think we've actually been building slightly more. Last year we built more homes than previously. So the percentage of affordable homes may reflect the sort of the bigger financial state of the world, the state of developers' pockets, land finance, the viability of land finance. I would kind of prefer. I won't say any more because I don't know for sure. So I don't know if officers have any specifics to add to that, or should we leave it for Vicky Glover-Ward?
My only thing to add to that is possibly the year on year our fluctuations, just as I think everyone's going to say, that it's depending on what comes through and what completes and which proportion of that scheme completes that year. You tend to expect there to be a bit ups and downs on a year by year. If you look at it on a trend, we're still getting those numbers coming through. It's a bit of the delivery cycle.
Councillor Nichols.
I don't like to bring this up, but there was, just needed to mention the community governance review and the consultation process, and perhaps the need to look at how to improve local engagement and work around publicising consultations. I mean, the council did put the work in delivering leaflets to homes, put all the work in, but residents still said they didn't have a notification of the process and weren't involved. And I wonder if there's any work that we can do around improving that for future consultations.
I'm absolutely sure there is. I mean, I think the community governance group is being reconstituted, I believe, for some other work. But sort of that aside, we need to be very focused on consultations, and there are going to be some consultations coming up. LGR probably. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if any officers want to comment.
Yeah, I think just to say, lessons have been learned from that. What happened on the community governance reviews in Sawbridgeworth and Bunchingford. So, absolutely, we've heard the concerns of members, and yeah, we'll do everything we can to make sure that any of the future consultations are better publicised. We have now got the new engagement platform, Your Voice, which is working really well. And actually, just on the previous papers that we were discussing, we've seen a real uplift in consultation responses compared to previous years. So I think having that tool is really helpful because it just allows us to bring consultations to life a little bit, and it's just in a better way than what our previous digital channels allowed. But yes, we've definitely heard the concerns on that point. So take them on board.
Councillor Swains.
Yeah, I just noticed that the email rating feedback is not very good for any. Are there plans in place to try and improve that? It's page 46, bottom box. Oh, sorry, 106.
Yeah, it has gone down recently in terms of the email feedback, tends to be quite positive. The change we are making this year, and which we'll announce to staff shortly, which they'll be thrilled about. At the moment, it's only customer services that have the widget on the bottom of their email for members of the public to go in and click feedback. That's going to be rolled out to every member of staff, so that any interaction we have with a member of the public can then be tracked back. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests itself in scoring going forward.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the report? No? In which case, recommendations to review performance, which we've done, and recommend any refreshed or amended leaf priorities, which we've also done. So have a proposer and a seconder, please. Councillor Cox, Councillor Clements, all those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Brings us to the draft work programme. Peter, over to you.
Okay, looking ahead to the next couple of meetings, we've got items defined in there with dates attributed to them. There's a few items beyond that that don't. Beam was mentioned, but I know that Audit and Governance Committee are getting a report on that at the end of this month. That doesn't mean you can't discuss it, but there is a report coming there on that. Going back to what Sue Nichols was saying a moment ago about community governance reviews, and there's a thing in the work programme about listening council, again, not particularly defined, but there's a few things in there which you need to define in terms of what you want to talk about, which meetings. And so through you, Chair, over to you, committee, to have a chat about it.
That's for Andrews.
I'm assuming that the annual report on council complaints is on complaints about and of this council.
As opposed
I'm not
to...
assuming we're complaining about anything.
No.
I'm happy to if it would help.
Anyone else?
Any other items?
Yeah, I mean, this is your opportunity to say if there's anything else you want to see on the programme. But that opportunity is open-ended. You can raise those at any time. Councillor Andrews? Or David, did you want to say anything more?
Well, only to say it's challenging keeping focus given where we are in the LGR process. Early 2027 is a lot closer than it might otherwise appear, and we're not too far into 27 where things might change, but we've got to try and keep focused.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
And the chair's quite right. It doesn't have to happen now. There is the opportunity at any point to put a screening proposal form in at any point, and we'd welcome that. Anyone can fill those in and send them through to the chair at any time.
Councillor Andrews?
Can I propose that we accept the report?
Thank you. Seconder, please. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Last but not least, we have feedback from the executive leader.
Nothing. You'll be probably glad to hear at this time of the night. Nothing to add tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there will be next time. There being no further urgent items, that concludes tonight's business at 9:35. Thank you all.